So the final project in the entry-level class is building a Roman Ludus, which is sort of like a gladiator training camp. One of the things inside it is this interesting set of stands, right? So if I hit kind of play, this is sort of seating for people to sit and to watch the competition going on. So how do we go through, how do we build something like that? Well, first off, if you look, when I click on this piece, you see its origin point is right here. And so if I go through and I rotate it around, you'll see I can get it over to this side, and as soon as I switch to move and set my grid over here to 100, I can move over and snap it into place for the opposite side. All right. What I do to get it to show up, you can see here, this has a -1 for scale. What that is that means I'm actually mirroring the piece. This is the original piece over here, and in order to mirror it over to the other side, I do this little trick where I enter a value of -1, right, which causes it to rotate like that, and then I just come through and I rotate it into position. Let's put that back. All right, so I'm using negative scale in order to create my mirrored pieces. So you'll notice that if let's look here from above. I'm going to go to the top view. Here's sort of my level layout. Now it's 9 units across and 13 units deep. I want to have openings for my stairs inside them. So that's why the origins are kind of offset. They're not smack dab in the middle of the arena, they're offset over to the side here. And that kind of helps me, that's going to help me know when I go to build it. Or I should say, it helped inform me when I built it. All right, so I can walk you through my process here. Here's the model inside 3ds Max. All right, so I have it selected here. So I'm going to unhide all, and you can kind of see how I got to this point. So what I have here is a plane, right? And the plane is scaled out so that every one of these pieces is 400 units, right? Because when we went and we built our floor planes and all of our other geometry, everything was based off of 400 units. And so I kind of recreated sort of that environment inside here. And I can show you something you may find interesting. If I select a piece here, and let's just do select, I'm going to do matching selected classes, so that's going to grab every single floor piece. I'm going to right click and say select and do, visibility. I'm going to do show only selected. So now I can come in here, and if I come in and grab these, because I believe this is my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. I'm just going to do visibility, show only selected. And I just want to get rid of this one extra row over here. I'm going to just hit H to hide it. All right. And then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13. All right. So this is the base for my ground. If I do visibility, show all actors, you'll see that's my ground. All right. I want to do that. You could actually do file, export selected, and if you have a location that you want to go to, then you could actually final 4. Just going to export all those out, and then here in Max I could do a file import, and if I go to that location where those are located, I can actually import them into my scene. So I've talked in the past about going through and building how you may use modular pieces such as these to block out a level, but you could always go back in and refine it. So if you wanted to make like a custom floor after you kind of laid it out, you could always export these out and use it as a guide to combine things together. So I'm going to get rid of all those. I don't really need those. Yeah, looks like I'm stuck with them. I'll go ahead and reopen my scene. So I do know that if I'm offset from the front, then I need my stands to be 3 floor tiles across and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 deep. Right? So if my overall space is 9 by 13, 3 by 5, right? And since we're using 400 unit tiles, this would be 1200 by 2000, right? That would be the dimensions of our stands. So what we can do, go ahead and hide this. If I come in here and in perspective, I'm going to come over here and select shapes, rectangle, and under keyboard entry, I'm going to create something that has a 12,000 by 2000 size. Oops, that's too much. I got extra zeros in there. It's 1200 by 2000. There we go. Believe if I unhide all, yep, that's accurate. See how that's going to match that size. So then I could now just come over, and if I wanted to center this over to the side, I could go ahead and right click and convert to editable spline. Go into the spline volume here and figure out where that needs to sit. I'm going to right click and hide unselected again. He needs to sit about here. If I look at his value down here, that means he needs to be at 1000 by 600. There he goes. And that puts him right in the perfect spot. Okay, so his origin's going to be down here. The main geometry is going to be there. What I need to do is get that curve going. So I'm going to go ahead. I don't need the bottom corner of this anymore, so I'm going to delete it. Actually, I'm going to get rid of that segment is what I want to get rid of. And I'm going to go into vertex, grab this vertex point, and I'm going to use fillet. I'm just going to click here and drag, and that's going to bring that guy over. I'm going to select these two, crank my weld up to something like 500 and hit weld. I'm going to bring this point and just move him over so that those two are on top of each other, and I'm going to once again just weld them together. So let's just make sure this point, if I select it, it's spline 1, vert 2. I'm going to make sure he's at 0. Make sure this guy's down there at 0 on Y. Okay, so now I have my spline. It's got the nice curve that I want. One thing I can do is if I go into interpolation, I can increase that value to something higher. If I put it to like 12, that'll round it out more. 18 will do it even more than that. So now I have the shape that I'm going to use for my stairs, right? And so I'm going to end up using a sweep on it. So I'm going to call this stands underscore sweep. Okay, so now I need to create the actual shape that I'm going to go along there, because I'm going to use our old spline tool friend, sweep, which uses shapes, right? Now that'll utilize custom shapes if we want, or we could go through and use a custom selection, right? And that's what we want to do. So I'm going to come over here to the front. I'm going to go to create, and I want to create a shape here, a rectangle, and I'm going to do keyboard entry, and I want to set the length to 400 and the width to 200 and hit create. Alright, that's going the wrong direction, so I'm going to, doesn't matter, I'm going to right click, convert to editable spline, and I'm going to come in here to the sub object of spline, select it, and rotate it. I want to make sure my angle snaps on because I want to rotate this 90 degrees. I'm going to go to move. I'm going to raise this up so that the bottom is sitting here at 0 and this one is sitting up at 200. There we go. So now we want to start breaking this up into the individual shapes. Right, so I could go through here, vertex, grab this point, delete it, grab all these points, and just turn them into corners. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to make a set. I basically want to get the seating inside here. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to use divide. Now you can see I've already set my divide to 21. Now the reason I have it set to the number 21 is I want to have 10 seats, right? I want to have 10 basically step sections in here. And so for every step I'm going to need 2 points, and I'm going to need 1 extra, and I'll show you why in a second, because I'm going to hit divide and then go into vertex. And basically I'm going to take all my points and move them up and over to the side. I'm going to do this all at once, so I'm going to make sure I'm on select so I don't accidentally select and move anything. And I just want to grab every other point. And now I'm just going to raise these up and I'm going to move them over to the side. So that now I have these little stairs. I'll leave them with a slight angle back. There we go. So now I have kind of my stepped stair shape going along. And now I can select my spline over here from my sweep. I'm set to use custom selection. I'm going to go pick and I'm going to select that shape. And that's how I get my geometry happening. Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure that it fits inside our grid. Right? We want this to be within the 3, right? So here to 5. So we're going to have to adjust the shape a little bit. Now part of that is coming over to the sweep parameters. I'm going to offset it. I'm going to drag this down. And what I'm doing is I'm dragging down that value. So I could probably just do, it looks like, a value of negative 200. Because if it's at 0, what it means is just the point is, it's centering it. And I don't want my shape to be centered on the spline. You see how it's centering it? I actually want it to be offset. Now that's going the outside, so that's too much. I actually want to go the opposite direction, so I'll do negative 200 there. All right, so now the next part is I got to deal with the fact that it has these slight curves. So I'm going to come in here to editable spline, go to vertex. I'm going to turn on show end results. Now when I grab this point, I could actually come in here and adjust this shape. So I'm just going to grab this point and raise it up so that this line here is a little bit flat. Okay. I'm going to come down here to the side and I'm going to raise him up so he's flat. I actually kind of want to, yeah, I just want to get him sort of flat like that. Now if you want to keep it at more of a curve, you could keep the shapes as they were. Right? So if I left them as they were like this, there's another option, which if I take this and convert to edit poly, now that I have my shape, it sits in the proper location, I can actually come in here to element and turn on my slice plane. And if I rotate that 90 degrees, I can then just move that over to 0 and slice my model right there, rotate it 90 degrees again, and move that to 0 on the Y plane and slice it one more time. Now what I could do is just come in and I can select everything down here on the bottom and delete it, everything over here and delete that. And then what I would need to do is just come back into my model here and go through and actually rebuild all of this missing geometry, right? So I could go in and grab a bunch of these edges here. There we go. And if I drag those down and collapse those points together, I could then use target weld those up to the top. There we go. See how we're getting them all in there? And then our final step would be to grab that border again, go into edge mode and deselect the two edges on the side, and just kind of pull the whole thing down. And then once again, just do collapse, and then we could do a target weld to target weld that over to the side here. So now we have, we don't worry about any weird n-gons because we've triangulated the whole thing there. Do the same thing over on this side, right? And so, I mean, I might even be able to, if I grab an edge, do modify selection, do dot ring. There you go. That even goes through and grabs every other one. Perfect. I just deselect the ones I don't want. Come down here, collapse them together, and then I might even be able to just go through and grab all these vertex points. No, that's not what I want. I'm going to go into edge and use target weld to target weld these edges in where I need them. Here we go. Everything's getting welded into position. Nice and clean. There we go. Now I'll just grab the border, go into edge, deselect those sides, drag that down, collapse them to one point, and use target weld that edge up, and there we go. All right, that's it. The last thing would be just to create a base set of UVs for it. And so I'm just going to put a UVW map on it, right click and convert that at poly. And now if I go into unwrap UVW and open my UV editor, I could go through and start breaking it up. Like I could grab my side edges here and my side polys, and just peel that. Grab this side over here, peel that as well. And then as I go along, just pack to get all the pieces packed together. And then let's go in, and in edge mode, I'm going to grab this one edge here and hit loop, and I'm going to define that as a seam. I'm going to orbit around to the other side, grab that edge, grab the loop, define that as a seam, and now I could come in here and in polygon, click on the main body of it, and just hit peel. And then from there, it's a simple relax. So I can relax my geometry at that point. So now you just pack these together. Oh, that's weird. I got one random edge kind of off on his own. See that guy over there? So I'm just going to go into edge mode. I'm going to turn off, select by element, and just stitch him back into place. Get back in there. Yeah, stitch that guy back into place. And then this is good. I'm going to right click and convert to edit poly. I'm going to put a new unwrap on, and I'm actually going to take under map channel, I'm going to go from map channel 1 to map channel 2 and say move, and then just right click and convert to edit poly, because now I have light maps on it. So that's good. And then the last thing would be just going back into unwrap UVW, open the UV editor, and then just double check like how this kind of depends on what the resolution is for your texture. You know that this edge right here along the bottom, that's 400 units. And so if you have a texture that actually should fill a 4-meter space, what you could do is grab the pieces of your model and rotate them. And it kind of depends on the shape. Sometimes it helps to have, consistent positioning, meaning if I'm always having my pieces kind of sitting vertically or sitting like this, there we go. And I could take this guy, kind of getting them more consistently across in that direction. This is the bottom, doesn't matter as much about him. But what I can do is I'm going to grab these guys and move them down to the bottom corner, because I'm going to use freeform to grab everything. And if I hold control over here on the side on my keyboard and grab this corner, it's going to scale things uniform. And what this is allowing me to do is scale my pieces so that now I know that this means the texture is going to tile across here. This is 400 units, and so if your texture resolution matches that sort of size, and that's one way you could kind of work out your texture resolution, or as it's sometimes called, it's sort of talking texel density, but yeah. All right. Uh, that's it for this guy. The only other thing you would want to do is maybe build some collision geometry. You could probably break it down. You're going to need to do it in a couple different pieces because it does have this concave portion here. So that's it. That's going through and building the stands for the Ludus.